Right. In your agenda today, it tells you that I'm going to be talking about on to offline. It's a business issue. That slide is in there, but I thought that what might be helpful for everyone in the room was for me just to shape up the size of the digital advertising market in comparison to all traditional media. These are figures that you may not have seen. Has anyone here actually been to an IAB event before? Okay, good. So a little bit of familiarity with that. So this is me, Senior Programs Manager. That will be meaningless to you unless I put industry programs in front of it. We're the team actually responsible for industry development within the IAB. So here's my agenda for you today: who we are, how big is it, and on to offline insights, which I think will be particularly interesting to you. So the Internet Advertising Bureau is a not-for-profit. We're a trade body. We represent the digital advertising industry in the UK. We were set up in 1997. I think the actual size of spend on digital advertising then was around about 200 million. Please don't quote me on it, but it is of that order. We now employ 30 full-time members of staff. We could do with another 30, believe me. And we have about 1,000 member companies, half of whom are brands. And if you're a brand sitting in this room, and I think a lot of you are, do please consider go and look at the IAB website. Everything we do is free of charge for brands. If you are a supplier, a media owner, an agency, an ad tech company, you pay your membership fees to be part of the trade body. And we're based just down the road in Covent Garden. So very quickly, how big is digital advertising? So these are the 2014 full year figures that I'm talking to you about at the moment. So they're H1 2015. Full year 2015 is released on the 14th of April. Is that correct? Yes, we've had to shift the date slightly. These are numbers that PwC collect and analyse for us. So as you can see, digital advertising spend is now, by some considerable margin, the single largest media category. The next category, of course, is TV, but it's still £1.6 billion spend behind. So I think we can categorically say that the digital sector is sitting high up on most people's agenda. The other thing I would mention about this is the UK market spend. In the UK, we spend more per capita on digital advertising than any other economy in the world. And in the UK, we spend more on online shopping than any other economy in the world. So some of these numbers that I'm going through don't necessarily represent other economies. Putting this into context, digital is currently sitting at 42% of total advertising spend, the total 9.4 billion spent in the UK. There are some slight anomalies and adjustments, and that figure might be 41% because of the adjustments across traditional news brand media, for instance, where we count the digital advertising spend across there. But we're waiting for some later figures, but that's the kind of order of adjustment that you'd be looking at. Putting that into more context, and which is particularly important, I think, for a lot of your businesses, is the percentage of that spend that is actually search, which is 22%. It's over half digital spend is in search, but actually in total advertising spend in the UK, that is 22% of all advertising. I think underlining the importance of search as a mechanic in the marketing process. And the other area that I think is important for us all to understand is the importance and rate of growth of mobile. So at the moment, mobile advertising revenue is accounting for about a quarter of all spend in the digital sector. And what that means in terms of growth, as you can see in 2015, we're looking at a growth rate of between 25 and 30%. I haven't got the full year figures, but I think it will be of that order. And that's, again, something that is going to seriously affect the dynamic of how the advertiser reaches the consumer and what happens in between. And that's really what I want to focus on next, which are our online to offline, our O2O insights. In October last year, we produced what we're calling a green paper, in terms of parliamentary language. This is not a white paper. We're not telling you what things are. We're trying to draw together the conversation because there are so many different approaches to taking our insights or our ability to track people online through advertising and other online touch points through to the offline world. So one of the reasons this came about is because, as well as all those digital advertising numbers that I showed you, we also represent what we're calling the online performance marketing industry. And in fact, this year, 2015, we'll see all of these numbers drawn together. So as well as taking 42% of the advertising spend budget, there is an additional spend by marketers into the affiliate marketing, online lead generation, and email sectors. And we measure affiliate marketing and lead generation because these two channels, or business models, if you like, utilize the advertising structure online in order to deliver complete sales and full varying types of data records, from email address through to full financial details and so forth through lead generation. So this was our third time that PwC measured this market for us, and we found that advertisers are spending 1.1 billion in these particular sectors. What makes this very interesting for us is that that represents a £700 million addition on top of the almost 4 billion that is being spent on digital advertising, thus increasing the amount of focus from all brands into the digital sector. What that means for us, because these are complete sales or valued data records, this 1.1 billion generates a market value of 16.5 billion in retail sales. That's about 10% of UK e-commerce. So it's a really interesting and a developing area. We're seeing a 14.5% growth rate just in that sector. So what happens here? A lot of this market is represented by cashback, by voucher codes, for example, many of which are in use offline. Top Cashback, Quidco, all have mechanisms now to collect cashback at the till through online development. Voucher codes, taking online collection of a voucher code for offline redemption at the till. So how do we connect these two quite disparate parts of the world? Not how do we connect, what does this mean in terms of how we need to look at the business going forward? So 40% of UK customers start out the process of purchasing online, consideration, research, etc. And yet 84% of all retail sales are taking place in store. So there's a kind of a 26% gap here of online activity, whether purchases made not online, as many people would expect, but in store. How do we manage that? And in our green paper, and there are a few copies outside, and I believe, Lara, you're going to be circulating the soft copy of this, which, as I say, just sets out to ponder some of these questions for every... Oops, why am I not moving? There we go. It'll be 60% in just 3.5 years. 60% of all retail sales, and we think we're being quite conservative using this Forrester figure, starting online and finishing offline. And 22% of those sales will be online as well. So there's still a huge gap in the middle that we need to learn how to understand, how to control it through our systems working on and offline. Because at the end of the day, the customer treats the retail brand the same, whether it's online, whether it's by phone, or whether it's offline. And I mean, I had an example where I had a phone. I'd been with O2 for 1 million years, and I phoned up and I said, my phone's broken, I need a new one. And the guy said to me, well, where did you buy it? I said, why would I know where I bought it? I said, I'm an O2 customer. I've had, dozens of phones from you. Oh, see, the thing is, I can't help you unless I know whether or not you bought it by phone, in store, or online. And he was embarrassed, he said, it's ridiculous, I know, but we're charged with 3 different profit centers in the business. So I said, fine, we fixed it somehow. But Stephen Lowy, who's the founder of Westfield. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Westfield shopping centre empire. It's a property empire, essentially the business that they're in. They have been investing massively in their digital capability, and they've set up an R&D unit out in Silicon Valley, and are pulling together a whole host of different digital products because they know that people go out shopping, it's part of their leisure activity, it's something that people enjoy participating in, but they also know how reliant we are as customers, and particularly in the UK, which is one of the reasons why they're pioneering a lot of the new digital moves here in the UK. And I know I'm not really meant to talk about these things fully, but if you go onto the Westfield site and download their app to your phone, you will be able to browse by product. So by Westfield integrating all the SKU data from all their tenants, you are able to pinpoint specifically an individual product and buy it. And you can buy it in store, you can reserve it, or you can buy it online. And Westfield still, through the affiliate network, get their cut of that sale. So there's some very smart stuff. Plus you can pre-book your car parking space and cinema tickets and pick up your lunch and all sorts of things through this kind of app. So a physical retail giant sees digital very much as part of its foundation path forwards. So in terms of online to offline, how do we, keep hold and control of that 26% gap, soon to be 40% gap of our knowledge of how people are working? And what we found in the green paper was that technology is not the issue. All of these things work in different ways, whether it's through payment transaction systems or whether it's by location systems or whether it's by intermediary redemption routes or any other kind of technology that's going to be invented. All the pieces are there. What isn't there is the strategy for connecting them all together. And actually, we're talking about management issues, we're talking about organizational structural issues. So the Holy Grail, this single customer view, I'm sure everyone here is working towards this in some form, and no doubt KPI'd against it as well. There are some companies setting trends in this area. I would say Macy's is, which has recently been pulling together all its back end And then the final piece was pulling together its marketing teams up front. The digital team with the not digital team, which is quite groundbreaking, astonishingly enough. The Body Shop has also done that in the UK, and Coca-Cola as an FMCG product taking advantage of its first touch opportunity with digital, which of course is quite a new territory for most FMCG consumer products, is doing some really interesting work around at till redemption points through a company called Eagle Eye, a UK company. So this holy grail position, obviously we're all working in silos, that's really the problem. So my big message, or the message out of our online to offline green paper, is really very straightforward. You know, by regarding digital channels and physical channels as quite separate and distinct things, that actually you're setting up all sorts of barriers to progress, even within your own business. Very often, a retailer's biggest competitor is itself. If you look at companies like Arcadia, where they have a whole range of different fashion groups, you will find that as much as 50% of Topshop's sales are conducted online, while I think about 15% of Evans' sales. These are just, you know, illustrative numbers, that they're not reportage numbers. So in Topshop's world, if you've got your digital marketing team, budgets, objectives, etc., in competition with the high street team, you're actually talking about potentially cannibalizing your own sales. Inefficiency, duplication, optimization, opportunities. Nobody without a single strategy across digital and physical is going to be able to understand what that untapped 26%, that's 26% of a customer's time uncontrolled, untapped, and what can we do with it? How can we understand what showrooming behaviours actually mean in terms of how we address and talk to and connect with customers, and at what point in the journey? How can we understand that customers who shop with us online as well as offline, expecting deliveries next day or to walk out of store, how can we understand how to work out the merchandising and the inventory management implications of this massively changed behaviour within our customer base? It's got to be a business strategy, and it's got to be a collective business strategy, and digital can no longer be pushed into a sort of a peripheral position whereby those kind of young geeky people get on and do that kind of thing, while us grown-up retailers, you know, carry on running the business. And essentially, we don't know what the future looks like. We don't know what new technologies are going to be moving out there in the future. Digital advertising, mobile, laptop, tablet is all part of the piece, as is digital deployment in store, as is continued development of in-store and physical marketing. And there's a lot of experimentation required, because we still love to shop, whether it's online or offline, depending on the time of day, the time of year, where on earth we are. And as well as all the leadership coming from the top, there has to be a new preparedness to be brave and to fail. Because without those failure points, we honestly will not learn what works best well for those relationships. So that's me, and hopefully if you want to connect, please do, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.